introduce those who don't know too well, the man, the myth, the legend, Marshal Emil von Mannerheim. He's a very interesting person. Initially, he was Russian, or not initially, well, he was originally with a Russian cavalry group, who eventually became part of the Empress's Guard cavalry regiment. He would later be handpicked to lead an expedition to explore China, as this was this magical new land that everyone was really interested in. Lead an interesting expedition in China, spent a few years there, caught rheumatism, which would plague him the vast sum of his life. Coming back after China, he would later serve in the Russian military in the Russo-Japanese War, and would also then go on during World War I in order to lead his cavalry regiment in the war against the Austrians and the Germans. And there's plenty more I could go into detail on that, but I want to keep it a little bit brief so we can all get through and talk about the vast sum of history. Following World War I, he more or less realized, oh man, something's going on in Russia and it doesn't look good. Hey, does anybody think we should do something about these revolutionaries in Russia? And for the most part, all the generals and aristocracy that he would talk to would say, no, it's not really a big deal. Don't worry about it. This will blow over in a week or two. Well, it evidently didn't, and he ended up fleeing to Finland, to his mother country. Shortly thereafter, the Bolshevik Revolution takes place in Russia. Russia collapses, and a lot of the different states of the Russian Empire start to claim their own autonomy. Well, Mannerheim is in Finland, and he has a military background, so he's sought as one of the advisors for the the provisional government. As the government breaks down and the Civil War starts to take place, Mannerheim ends up in charge of the white forces and leads some of the real first, groundbreaking moves, disarms a Russian garrison in Vasa, and it's an interesting character. In the end, the War of Liberation would end, and the White Finns would win. Immediately afterwards, as my compatriot here, Channing, mentioned, the government decided, you know what, the Germans helped us out in the War of Liberation. We're going to become a monarchy. We're going to elect a German prince. Mannerheim was very against this. He said Finland should be a democracy. We shouldn't have a German prince. The Germans are going to lose this war. Very adamant about not having a German prince, and threatened the government that if you choose to have a monarchy, I'm out of here. Well, the government decided to have a German prince, and Mannerheim left to Sweden. He fled the country. The government would then decide, well, since you didn't want a German prince, we are now appointing you the regent over the prince until he's installed. Congratulations. Which didn't please him terribly. He was very grieved by this. But he would work very hard to restore international relations in Finland, eventually would manage to convince the government to not have a German prince and form a democratic country instead, and would again be appointed in charge of the Finnish military. Following the War of Liberation, he actually would butt heads quite frequently with parts of the Jäger movement. They didn't really like him since he was a Russian general and they were all German trained. So there's a lot of infighting, and that goes into Civil Guard and Finnish Army infighting, but I won't go into too deep into that. In the interwar years, he would spend a little bit of private time, which was pretty much his only time in his life where he got to do what he wanted. He was really excited, even though he had a flare-up of his rheumatism, which was actually threatening his life, and his doctor really advised him very strongly, don't do this, don't do this. Mannerheim would reply, I've always wanted to go to India to hunt tigers. I want to go hunt tigers. And he would proceed to go to India against his doctor's wishes to hunt tigers, and he had a lovely time. He would explore India and Asia, would teach the Dalai Lama how to shoot. That was an interesting experience. He's a rather interesting character to read about, and he said it was one of the most interesting and exciting times in his life. It's the time that he would often reflect on. After spending some time in India, he would return to Finland in order to find that the military was in a very sorry state, hard to get funding. Every move he would try to make in order to try to modernize the Finnish military in terms of aircraft, any type of armor would be fought with a lot of opposition, but also with budget constraints, as Finland didn't really have the economy to support any of these things. So the Finnish military kind of languished in the interwar years. He would go on to lead the nation through the Winter War. He was very influential in directing counterattacks and organizing things. He wasn't just a figurehead who sat in the back and watched as people played out the war, but would be actively involved, and his advice was always very crucial to the success of the Finnish military. Following the Winter War, he would be a big advocate for the rearmament and aided in the rearmament effort. Would again lead the Finnish military during the Continuation War, which we will get into shortly, as we're actually still about to get into the Winter War. So I don't want to spoil the fun. So I